name is Laurie Powell and I'm an artist living in the Northeast. I moved up to Alnwick when I was about 12. It's very much become the place and the location and the history and the landscape has very much become involved in my creative practice, to the point where when I left the Northeast I actually found it quite difficult to make work because there was this kind of disconnect from my main source of inspiration. When making ceramics, I tend to start with the clay. So I will go out and I'll try and find a source of clay locally in sort of the landscape. And I'll dig that clay. And then first and foremost, I'll see what the properties of that clay is. So for me, it's definitely important to understand its own characteristics instead of just enforcing my will of, okay, this is what I want to do with that material. It's much better to sort of listen to it and be like, okay, this is quite rough. This might look nice, unfinished, unglazed, or sometimes it's a lot finer and silkier and it will throw beautifully, so you can create much sort of finer sort of forms and shapes with it. So I always try and approach it that way in a almost kind of like collaborative, instead of just artist makes what artist wants to do sort of thing. Kind of got to try and listen to the material itself. As a general rule, I much prefer working with materials that I know where the origins of the materials are. It creates a kind of relationship with the material. When I first started making as an artist, I was less into the materiality. I normally start with an idea and try to sort of put that into form. But I definitely, especially as a student, I started to realize that actually that didn't really work for me. I wanted to be incredibly involved in the materiality of what I was working with. That became very, very important. The work that I'm showing at the Hatton Gallery is it's a series of clay panels that have been fired to different temperatures, and they're from different locations throughout Northumberland. And it's trying to showcase the variety of material sort of possibilities that can be achieved by just using local materials. And it's very much exploring how even sometimes these locations can be relatively close to each other, but the actual the qualities, how it acts when fired to different temperatures, can just be, entirely varied. And there's possibility in that, which I find quite exciting. So this work was very much me sort of exploring these specific materials and almost documenting those differences. Environmental concerns are already very, very important for what I do, and I think that's only going to grow. I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is create a sort of positive argument for how we can respond effectively to climate crisis. We can restructure our sort of relationship to material culture in a way that's much more enriching and brings a lot more to our sort of cultural lives. I think that's quite exciting, trying to make that positive argument, because there is a lot to be said for having a more localized approach to material culture. I think that could be a wonderful thing in itself. We need to be very mindful of how long these objects will last for. We're still digging up pottery from the earliest stages of human history. These things don't break down quickly. When I'm making, I try to be really thoughtful before I fire something, because that's almost a point of no return. Before I fire it, I can break it back down and turn it into something else. I try to be really conscious of, do I want to solidify this for thousands of years potentially, even on landfill. People need to face up to the sort of material implications of the things they own. Every time we own objects, we need to be aware of the environmental impact that these objects and these materials have. And I feel like it's a real moment of opportunity to sort of take that challenge and make a positive expression of how we can enrich our lives through addressing those challenges. I want to be fully aware of the consequences of these actions. So I like digging clay from locations that I will visit and revisit that are part of my local environment. To be there seeing the impact that has on the environments from which I'm taking this clay. It forces me to be more precious with the material that I then do gather. I'll be very, very careful with it. I'll always be recycling every last piece that I can. Partly because of the amount of work that's involved in processing clay in a hands-on, small-scale way. But also because there is this kind of respect between me and the place that I took the clay from and the clay itself, that it kind of forms more of a relationship where it's kind of more mutual, it's more reciprocal relationship. Yeah, that's quite important for me.